"Move aside, fat pig. Don't ruin my wedding photos." That's what my brand new daughter-in-law hissed at me in front of everyone. I stayed silent, but then her father turned and saw me. His smile collapsed. His face went pale, because he didn't just see his daughter's mother-in-law. He saw the millionaire who secretly bought out his company 3 years ago. From that moment, this wedding was no celebration. It was the stage where every secret would explode. I am Linda Parker. To most, I look like just a quiet widow. But Richard Reed knows the truth. I'm the woman who secretly bought his company 3 years ago. That's why, when my daughter-in-law called me a fat pig at her wedding, I didn't react. People who dismiss you always dig their own graves. From the beginning, Madison paraded her old money taste and mocked everything simple in our lives. She didn't love my son, Ethan. She loved what she thought she could take. On the wedding morning, an envelope slid under my hotel door, a silver crest, a key, and a message. 5 p.m. Terrace. Come alone. I knew it was a trap, but I went. Behind that jasmine-covered door, Richard Reed was waiting. On a laptop screen blinked numbers that exposed his company's desperate debts. He begged me for silence, for cooperation, for a leash disguised as a contract. I folded it, looked him in the eye, and said, "You'll hear my answer soon enough." Before we dive deeper into today's dramatic story, don't forget to subscribe to Twist Stories and turn on notifications. Here you'll always find tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and shocking turnarounds. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. Your story might inspire our next video. When I returned to the garden, Madison raised her glass for the toast, smiling for the cameras. Ethan searched the crowd for me. Then the loudspeaker crackled. The band fell silent. A video feed appeared on the white wall, my face in a boardroom 3 years younger, saying the words that made the entire garden freeze. "On behalf of the Parker Trust, we accept." Madison's glass trembled. Richard covered his mouth. The wedding wasn't a celebration anymore. It had become the stage where every secret would explode. The wedding garden froze. Crystal glasses hung in midair as the screen above the dance floor lit my younger face, and my voice rolled out calm and lethal. "On behalf of the Parker Trust, we accept." 100 heads turned. Madison's champagne flute trembled. Catherine clutched her pearls like they were oxygen. Ethan's eyes ricocheted from the screen to me, a boy's hurt fighting a man's pride. And Richard, so loud at boardrooms, so grand in magazines, went the color of old paper. "Who did this?" Catherine hissed. Richard swallowed. "Linda Parker. She's been hiding more than anyone knows." Whispers splintered the air. Whispers are weapons at a wedding, and they always find a target. Madison came at me across the lawn, veil flaring like a battle flag. "You set me up," she spat. "Playing poor in a thrift store dress while you laughed at me behind my back. I married into money, but not yours. I don't owe you respect. You're just his mother, nothing else." It wasn't a slap, but it stung longer. Phones lifted, red dots blinking. Cruelty loves a camera. I didn't answer. Silence is a mirror. It forces people to stare at themselves. "Madison, stop," Ethan said, voice breaking. "No," she snapped. "She lied to you. She lied to all of us." Her words cut him. Her rage clarified Richard. He looked less like a mogul now and more like a gambler who finally saw the dealer's hands. Which way would Ethan lean? Toward blood or toward performance? At the reception dinner, the quartet played something pretty and brittle. Candlelight quivered over faces that tried to smile but failed. Catherine leaned in, her mouth smiling, her eyes closed shut like a fist. "Linda, I appreciate discretion, but hiding this from Ethan, that feels deceitful. He deserves transparency." I set my water down. "And Madison deserves humility." "You can't possibly think—" "I think a family is measured not by how it looks, but by how it treats whoever it believes is powerless. Her fork pinged against porcelain. Richard's hand shook, refilling a glass he wouldn't drink. Ethan stared at his plate as if answers might appear in the glaze. That night, under the hallway camera, Madison paused outside the bridal suite and looked back at me. "You may think you're clever," she murmured, "just for my ears. But I'm not stupid. I'll find everything. And when I do, Ethan will never look at you the same." Then came the practiced smile for the lens, the kiss on my son's cheek, the door closing like a verdict. Reflection beat. If you've ever heard a promise of war inside a wedding whisper, you know how it echoes long after the music stops. Within a week, Ethan called me, voice rough with sleeplessness. "Mom, did you really buy Reed Dynamics?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" A pause. "You always taught me honesty." "I taught you survival," I said, quieter than the doubt between us. He hung up before I could explain. Meanwhile, Madison's feed turned into a parade. Designer dinners, charity teas, clinking glassware against manicured views. "Married into legacy, building our empire," she captioned. The comments adored her gloss. I knew the numbers under the gloss, the interest that didn't care about angles or filters. The audience sees the mask. My son does not yet. The Reeds' dining room glittered like an apology. Chandeliers scattered light across mahogany. The air smelled of peonies and panic. Richard raised a glass. "To new beginnings." "To new control," Madison corrected, smile pinned to me. "Linda, with your resources, you should establish a family trust. Ethan and I will manage investments. You'll retain symbolic oversight." "Symbolic?" I asked. "It's cleaner," she cooed. "Transparency, legacy, protecting Ethan's future." "And yours," I said. The room held its breath. Ethan blinked. "Wait, what?" I turned to Madison. "And what, precisely, do you contribute?" Her smile wobbled, then reset. "Connections, strategy, vision." "Vision without integrity is illusion." Catherine gasped. Richard coughed. Ethan looked like the ground beneath him had moved while he wasn't watching. If you were at that table, your child on one side, his new wife on the other, would you bite your tongue or bite back? Days later, Michael Harris laid a manila folder on my kitchen counter beside the cooling kettle and the old fruit bowl David had bought at a yard sale. "She's digging," he said. Inside, invoices, wire confirmations, a private investigator's card. Madison wasn't guessing anymore. She was mapping. Michael's gaze was steady. "She's building a case, concealed assets, undue influence. She'll spin it for headlines and regulators. If she makes enough noise, even truth gets drowned." I ran a finger down the paper's spine. 15 years of quiet work, meant to shield my son, reduced to a stack that could be twisted into a noose. That night, the porch light cast an honest circle on my steps. Across the street, a black car idled. Windows dark, engine low, watching. Ethan called again, voice frayed. "Mom, she says you're manipulating me, that you've always wanted control. Tell me it isn't true." "Control is for people who are afraid," I said. "What I want is your freedom." The line clicked. The car lingered. Would love listen, or would noise win? The rooftop glowed with soft glass and softer lies. The city glittered like a promise no one intended to keep. Madison introduced me to strangers as our family's silent partner, the word silent coded in sugar and threat. When Ethan stepped away to take a call, she leaned in, citrus and cold metal on her breath. "I've seen the documents," she whispered. "The Parker Trust, the properties. You're powerful, Linda, but vulnerable. How? You built quietly, maybe too quietly. Regulators love why. And if they ask loud enough, your son's career, my reputation, your careful image, poof." She let the word float. Unless what? Unless you create a family council, fold it all into a fund. Ethan and I help manage. Everyone wins. She sipped. Succession planning. I smiled without warmth. You don't want succession. You want possession. Driving home, my hands were steady on the wheel, but the ache sat in my knuckles. Madison wasn't circling anymore. She was diving. Michael returned that night with a flash drive. You should hear this. Static. Then Madison's voice, low and careless. Of course I don't love him. Ethan's nice, sure, but this marriage, it's a ticket. His mother's got millions, maybe billions hidden, and when she's gone, we'll control it all. I'll make sure of it. My stomach turned. My spine did not. Proof. Where? I asked. A friend at the hotel. She met her investigator there. She wasn't careful. For the first time in months, my silence wasn't a shield. It was a blade I could choose to lift. I didn't confront her, not yet. Quietly, I moved key assets into irrevocable trusts. I called old colleagues in law who still answered on the second ring. I gathered receipts not only of what she said, but of what she owed, the debts behind the dresses, the late notices behind the boasts. You're going to war, Michael said. I'm ending one. A few days later, Ethan stood in my kitchen, palms braced on the table that had survived homework spills and birthday candles. He looked older than his years. Madison's different, he said. Secretive, always on her phone. Sometimes I think she loves the picture more than the person. Son, I said, taking his hand, love that demands you betray your blood isn't love. It's leverage. His eyes searched mine, looking for the mother from his childhood and the woman from the screen. I need time. Take it, I said. Just don't let anyone spend it for you. Twilight turned the street lavender. The black car's door opened. Madison stepped out, heel tapping the curb, phone at her ear, laughter bright and hard. She didn't look toward my house. She didn't need to, because she believed she already owned the ending. I watched from the window, hand around my cup, breath steady. The porch light made a gold circle on the threshold. The night pressed in around it. Game was no longer at the edge of the lawn. It had come to my doorstep. The next move would decide not just what my son believed, but who he would become. A week after that disastrous dinner, I heard a knock on my porch. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there. His tie hung loose, his face hollow. The boy who once played with toy trucks on these steps now looked like a man carrying stones in his chest. Mom, he asked, voice raw, did you lie to me my whole life? The question sliced deeper than Madison's fat pig. You taught me modesty, hard work, living within our means. But all this time, you had millions, didn't you? You hid it, even from me. Why? I steadied my breath. Because love isn't measured in dollars. If people knew, they'd measure you by my balance sheet, not your soul. His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching. Madison says you kept it from me because you don't trust me, because you want control. And you believe her? My voice was barely more than a whisper. He turned away, shoulders hunched. I don't know what to believe anymore. When your child doubts you, what proof can a mother offer? That night, I unlocked the cedar chest that had sat untouched for years. Inside, wrapped in David's old work shirt, lay his final letter. Linda, if the worst happens, protect Ethan by protecting yourself. Hide what you must. Not every truth belongs to the world. Sometimes silence is the best shield. His handwriting was steady, firm. Across the years, David's voice reached me. He had known vultures would circle. That greed would one day wrap its talons around our boy. He trusted me to shield, not to show. I closed my eyes, clutching the letter. The weight of it pressed heavier than gold. That weekend, Madison orchestrated a rooftop brunch. Pastel dresses fluttered against a steel blue sky. Champagne glasses clinked, laughter sparkled too brightly. She paraded me before her friends as our family's silent partner. The word silent sliced sharper than the bubbles fizzing in my glass. When Ethan stepped aside to answer a call, Madison leaned in. Her perfume was sweet, her words venomous. "I've seen the documents, the Parker Trust, the properties. You're powerful, Linda, but vulnerable." "How?" My tone was flat. She smirked, eyes glinting. "You built too quietly. Regulators love to ask why. One headline and Ethan's career collapses. My reputation? Gone. Yours? Shattered. Unless what? Unless you create a family council. Put everything into a single fund. Ethan and I manage it with you. Succession planning." She raised her mimosa, smile glittering like broken glass. Driving home, I gripped the wheel until my knuckles whitened. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a threat wrapped in silk. Would I yield or turn her own weapon against her? That night, Michael Harris appeared at my door with a flash drive. His eyes were troubled. "You should hear this." Static crackled. Then Madison's voice, careless and cruel. "Of course I don't love him. Ethan's nice, sure, but this marriage, it's a ticket. His mother's got millions, maybe billions hidden, and when she's gone, we'll control it all. I'll make sure of it." My stomach twisted, but my spine steeled. Finally, proof. "Where did you get this?" "A friend at the hotel," he said. "She met with her investigator there. Madison wasn't careful." For the first time, I didn't feel like prey. I didn't confront Madison. Not yet. Instead, I fortified. I shifted assets into irrevocable trusts, contacted lawyers I trusted, collected not just her words but her paper trail, debts, reckless purchases, whispers of desperation. Michael frowned. "You're going to war." "No," I said. "I'm ending one." Days later, Ethan returned. His shoulders sagged, his face tired. "Madison's been different," he admitted. "Secretive, always on her phone. Sometimes I think she cares more about appearances than about me." He broke off, rubbing his temples. I reached for his hand. "Son, love that demands you betray your own blood isn't love. It's leverage." His eyes searched mine, torn between loyalty and truth. I need time. I wanted to say more, to beg him to see, but I held back, because trust cannot be forced. It must be chosen. Mini cliffhanger. Would Ethan choose his wife's lies or his mother's silence? That evening, twilight painted the street lavender. For days, a black car had idled at the curb, its windows tinted, its engine low. That night, the door finally opened. Madison stepped out. Her heels clicked against the pavement, her laughter sharp as broken crystal. Phone pressed to her ear, she didn't glance at my house. She didn't need to, because in her mind, she already owned the ending. But I stood at the window, David's letter warm in my pocket. I whispered into the glass, "You don't know me at all." The real game had begun, and I wasn't going to lose. 2 weeks after Madison's venomous insult still rang in my ears, she summoned us to what she proudly called a family strategy meeting. The Reeds' grand dining hall glittered like a palace. Crystal chandeliers spilled fractured light across a polished mahogany table long enough to host an army. Silverware sat gleaming, aligned like weapons in a silent war. Yet beneath the grandeur, the air was thick, tension you could slice with a blade. Catherine perched stiffly, pearls glowing like armor. Richard poured whiskey into a crystal tumbler, though he never lifted it to his lips. Madison stood at the head of the table, chin high, posture regal, like a CEO of a company she had never built. And Ethan. Ethan sat trapped between us, his broad shoulders sagging under the weight of loyalties he could no longer balance. Madison spread a leather folder across the table with the theatrical grace of a queen unveiling a decree. "Linda," she said sweetly, "these are draft documents for the Parker Reed Family Trust. Ethan and I will manage investments. You'll retain symbolic oversight." "Symbolic?" I arched an eyebrow. "It's cleaner this way." she purred. Transparency, legacy, protecting Ethan's future. And yours, I cut in. The room froze. Catherine shifted, restless in her chair. Ethan's eyes darted between us, searching for clarity, for refuge. Would I bend to her scheme or strike back? Before Madison could press her advantage, I reached into my satchel and placed my own folder on the polished table. My movements were slow, deliberate, like a chess master sliding the queen into place. Funny, I murmured, because I've been doing some digging too. I opened the folder. Pages fanned out, investigator notes, debt ledgers, overdue invoices, and at the top, a transcript of her own words. Richard's hand trembled as he scanned the pages. Catherine's face drained of color, pearls clutched like a rosary. Ethan blinked at the words, refusing to believe the letters his eyes were forming. Madison's smile faltered, but she held it in place. This is fabricated. Is it? I asked, pressing play on the small recorder. Her own voice filled the chandeliered room, dripping with contempt. Of course I don't love him. Ethan's nice, sure, but this marriage? It's a ticket. His mother's got millions, maybe billions hidden, and when she's gone, we'll control it all. I'll make sure of it. The silence that followed roared louder than any scream. Ethan's chair screeched across marble as he pushed back. Madison, what is this? She stammered. It's out of context. Context doesn't change the words, I said evenly, voice cold as steel. Richard slammed his untouched whiskey onto the table, amber liquid splashing. Do you realize what you've done? His fury wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at his daughter. Catherine clutched her pearls, her voice trembling. Madison, please tell me this isn't true. But Madison's eyes, sharp and furious, locked onto mine. You think this scares me? Exposing me doesn't mean you've won. I can still ruin you, Linda. I can take everything. I leaned forward, every syllable deliberate. You can't take what you never owned. I slid one last document across the table. And here's what your empire really stands on. The paper revealed Reed Dynamics' crumbling foundation, mortgages stacked against the mansion, accounts drowning in red, their survival tied to the silent funds I had infused. Your legacy, I said icily, is propped up by the very woman you called a fat pig. The words lingered like smoke in the chandelier light. Ethan's face crumpled. Grief, betrayal, disbelief all twisting together. Madison, was any of this marriage real? She reached toward him, voice sugar-coated with desperation. Ethan, baby, But he recoiled, his voice breaking. Don't, just don't. You used me. Tears welled in his eyes as he turned toward me. Mom, I'm sorry I doubted you. I touched his trembling hand. Truth always finds its way, son, even when love tries to bury it. Madison rose, fury blazing. You'll regret this. I'll go public. I'll drag your name through the mud until nothing's left. I opened my purse with measured calm and slid a check across the table. $5 million. Take it and vanish. Leave Ethan. Leave me. Leave this family forever. Gasps rippled around the table. Richard's eyes widened. Catherine's lips parted, but no words came. Ethan's jaw tightened, his pulse visible at his temple. Madison sneered. You think you can buy me off? No, I said. I think you already sold yourself. I'm just closing the deal. She scanned the room. Her parents sunk in shame. Ethan broken, me unflinching. Her fury flickered, calculation overtaking. She snatched the check, stuffed it into her clutch, and stormed out. Her heels cracked against the marble floor like gunfire. The door slammed. The chandeliers trembled. The silence was suffocating, broken only by Richard's ragged whisper. Linda, you saved my company, and I repaid you with arrogance. I met his gaze, unblinking. You repaid me with insults. Consider the debt settled. He lowered his eyes. Catherine dabbed her mouth with a napkin she didn't need, pearls rattling faintly against her hollow chest. Ethan rose, his chair scraping softly, his voice steady despite the fracture in his heart. "I'm filing for divorce. I won't be her pawn anymore." Would he truly walk away from the wreckage, or would her shadow still follow? That night, Ethan came home with me. His suitcase was pitifully small, but his shoulders looked freer, unburdened. For the first time in weeks, we ate dinner without his phone buzzing, without his eyes darting toward shadows. "Mom," he said quietly, "I see now. You never wanted control. You just wanted to protect me." I smiled gently. Protection isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's armor no one recognizes until the battle ends. Later, after I tucked the folder of evidence into my cedar chest, the house finally felt still. Yet a thought gnawed at me. People like Madison don't disappear quietly. Money may silence them for a season, but bitterness feeds in the dark. And shadows. Shadows always find a way back when you least expect them. Sunlight streamed through my kitchen window, landing on Ethan's half-empty coffee cup. The room felt different, lighter, calmer. For the first time in months, there were no whispers bleeding through the walls, no black cars idling outside, no veiled threats tightening my chest, just peace. Ethan sat across from me, the morning light softening his tired face. He flipped through an old photo album. His thumb paused on a picture of his 5th birthday, his frosting-stained grin wide as David carried him on his shoulders. "Dad would have hated all of this," he murmured, voice breaking. I nodded slowly. He would have hated the pain, yes, but he would have been proud of you for choosing truth over comfort. Ethan's hand reached for mine, warm, steady. For the first time, I felt the roles had shifted, the boy I once protected now holding me with quiet strength. But peace is never permanent, especially when ghosts refuse to stay buried. 2 weeks later, I heard it, the sharp staccato of designer heels on my driveway. Madison. Her hair was flawless, her makeup polished, but her eyes betrayed sleepless nights. She smirked as if nothing had changed, as if the courtroom, the recording, the $5 million check were all just inconveniences in a game she still thought she was winning. "You think you won?" she sneered. "That check was nothing. I still have contacts. I can still destroy you." I stepped onto the porch, arms folded, my stance steady. "Madison, you've already destroyed the only thing worth saving, Ethan's trust. Money won't buy that back." Her laugh was bitter, hollow. "You're just a bitter widow clinging to control." "No," I said firmly. "I'm a mother who refuses to let her son drown in someone else's greed." The door opened behind me. Ethan stepped out, shoulders squared, his voice firm. "Madison, this is over. The divorce papers are filed. Whatever you had left of me is gone." Her face cracked, rage spilling into desperation. For a flicker of a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. She turned on her heel, slammed her car door, and sped away. This time, the sound wasn't a threat. It was an ending. Weeks later, the courthouse air smelled of dust and finality. Ethan emerged, relief etched across his shoulders as the judge signed the divorce decree. Freedom. Clean. No financial entanglements, thanks to the mountain of evidence we had laid bare. Richard Reed, once the mogul who dismissed me at Gallus, now faced investigations for corporate fraud and mismanagement. The empire he lorded over crumbled beneath headlines, shareholders turning their backs. Forced to resign, his name now carried the stench of scandal. Catherine, the ever-composed matriarch with her pearls and practiced smiles, disappeared from society pages. No more charity luncheons, no more photo spreads, just silence. Pearls traded for obscurity. The Reed name, once draped in prestige, became a cautionary whisper, proof that arrogance cannot outrun dishonor. And what of Ethan? Could he find love again after betrayal carved him hollow? One warm evening, cicadas humming their endless song, Ethan and I sat on the porch swing. The air smelled of honeysuckle. For the first time, his posture was relaxed. "Mom," he began, staring into the twilight. "I used to think love meant blind loyalty, but now I know it means honesty, even when it hurts." I smiled faintly. "Love without truth isn't love, Ethan. It's a leash." He let out a small laugh. "You always did speak in riddles." "They're not riddles," I said. "They're maps. You just had to grow into reading them." That night, I slept deeply, the first time in years without the weight of secrets pressing against my ribs. Months later, Ethan found someone new, Claire, a woman without titles or pearls, who volunteered at the local community center. She arrived at Sunday dinner in jeans and a simple sweater, bringing not wine but homemade pie. Her laughter filled the room like sunlight, genuine, unpolished, healing. I watched Ethan smile with her in a way I hadn't seen since he was a boy showing me a perfect report card. For him, this wasn't just love, it was a second chance, and for me, it was all the inheritance I needed. People often ask, did I feel victorious when Madison left? When Richard fell? The truth, victory isn't the word. What I felt was balance. A scale long, tilted, finally settling even. Because justice isn't about destruction, it's about protection, ensuring those who harm can no longer do so. And perhaps that's the greatest revenge of all. If you were me, would you have handed Madison that check to walk away or let her drown in her own lies without a lifeline? Your answer reveals more about who you are than about who she was. Life returned to its quiet rhythm. My garden bloomed again. Books stacked on my nightstand waited patiently. David's old blueprints remained tucked safely in the cedar chest. The Parker Trust stood firm, not as a weapon, but as a shield for Ethan, for his children someday. And I learned this. Betrayal may bend you, but it does not have to break you. Silence can be strength. Truth can be a sword, and dignity. Dignity is the inheritance no one can steal. So tell me, where are you watching from today? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget, subscribe to Twist Stories for more journeys of sacrifice, betrayal, and justice served with heart. This story is a work of fiction, inspired by struggles many families face. It is told solely for emotional reflection, storytelling, and entertainment. As the sun dipped low, painting the porch in gold, I whispered to the empty chair beside me, "David, I kept my promise. Ethan is safe." And in the stillness, I swear I felt him there, in the rustle of leaves and the soft evening wind, a quiet assurance that the storm had passed.